Hello people, welcome back. In today's video I'm going to be doing an Apex Fight Night card builder, which is not something you see every day. In this video I am going to be prioritising actual fun matchups over name value. There is going to be a bit of name value at the top of the card, but the rest of it, the idea is if you show a casual fan they'll know one fighter at most. If you show a hardcore fan they're going to be excited to watch these fights. That's the kind of premise of this video. One of you guys actually sent me the idea. It was Movie Maker 2357, so thank you very much, mate. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't worry, I have definitely put Peyton Talbot in here, so after you asked me to, I couldn't not do it, if you get what I mean. I've got a 6-fight main card and 6 fights on the prelims as well, and I set myself an extra challenge of not using anybody that's already, match made with somebody else. So the UFC could realistically announce this at any point. That was kind of what I was going for, so let's waste no more time and get into it. And we're going to start with the main event, which I've put as Dan Hooker versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Now, I know Hooker is injured. We don't know the extent of that injury right now. It seems relatively serious, but I would say probably next summer, May, June, he should be okay to compete. And I think him against the nutty Frenchman is a superb fight. Dan Hooker is one of those anywhere, anytime, any place kind of fighters, and Saint-Denis is finishing everybody right now. It kind of sells itself. If you know MMA, you know that would be a great fight to watch. And I think over 5 rounds, that is an absolute barnstormer. Now, I know that Dan Hooker is a relatively big name, but he's not one of those that any random casual fan will know. If you're in the know, you know all about Dan Hooker. If you're not, you may not. So I thought he'd be good as a headliner for a card like this. Our co-main event is Randy Brown against Joaquin Buckley. Now, of course, Randy was supposed to fight last weekend against Muslim Salikov. However, he got unwell with the flu, so he's now without a fight. I think him and Buckley is a very, very fun one. Looking at his recent fights, Randy Brown hadn't had a finish in his last, I think, 2 or 3 wins, but he is a finisher at heart. If you look before that, he's got quite a high finish rate. And I think with the fact that you know what you get with Buckley, he can basically have a good fight with anybody, I think. Buckley's also looked really, really good at 170. He has really impressed me. And I think if you can beat a guy like Randy Brown, you're looking at kind of the bottom of the welterweight rankings, like a Neil Magny or a Vicente Luque even. That could be a good one, actually. If this was to happen and Joaquin was to win, throw him in there with Luque in another Apex main event and you got another banger. Sorted. Again, with the name value, I think a portion of the fan base will obviously know Joaquin from that viral knockout against Impa Kasanganay the other year. But again, if you look at the kind of the more widespread fan base, they wouldn't recognise those 2 names, even though us as hardcore fans do. So it's a good co-main event, I think. Cub Swanson against Nate Landwehr. I mean, again, with the name value, I know that Cub is a relatively well-known kind of name in the community. Again, in the community, but in the kind of the wider spread, a lot of guys would have come in after Cub's prime. They may not know him. May not have seen the fights with the likes of Choi and Jeremy Stevens, the insane fights that Cub has had and still has now. And Nate the Train is just Nate the Train. I mean, there's only ever going to be one of him. He's effectively Sean Strickland with a little bit less kind of blue talk, if you get what I'm saying. But no, that is... It literally does have a 50k bonus written all over it. All the fights on this card do, but that one in particular just... It tickles my pickle if you get what I'm trying to say to you people. So yeah, that was an easy pick as the feature bout. This one is proper if you know, you know. It's Roman Kopylov against Nursultan Ruziboev. I probably said that wrong. If I did, I apologise. But if you know, it's an unbelievable fight. But no, I mean, you got a prospect, really, is kind of what I would say for Roman. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's been TKOing everybody. And on the other side, you've got Ruziboev, who's had 35 MMA wins, and only 2 have been by decision. I mean, do I really need to say any more? Really? But yeah, Roman, seriously, watch the Puna fight, watch the Ribeiro fight. The man is absolute dynamite. He is mustard, as I like to say in my tier list. And, I mean, is this likely to happen? Probably not. I don't think they would give a future star like Roman a guy like Ruziboev. But if they did, my God, it would be good. Next up, you need a heavyweight fight on a card like this. And I just thought, who are 2 relatively unknown names that I know are going to put on a show? And I just went for Junior Tafa and Dontel Mays. I mean, it's relatively easy matchmaking, I'm not going to lie. Junior Tafa is obviously the younger brother of Justin Tafa, and if you know about him, you know he's a big hitter. His younger brother is much of the same, although he is a slightly more technical striker than Justin, if maybe slightly less of a power hitter, but still powerful. And Dontel Mays is right on the limit of the heavyweight division and 6'6", so therefore he's going to hit hard. It's just, a fight like this, it doesn't take a lot to think about something like that. This is not my best matchmaking, it's just very, very easy, but at the end of the day, it would still be fun, because they're heavyweights, unranked heavyweights that hit hard. Something crazy is going to happen, right, most of the time. And this lightweight fight, again, was one that came pretty much right to my head. I'm going to do Slava Claus against Francisco Prado. Now, if you watch UFC 295, and not just the main card, the whole damn thing, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about with old Slava Claus. I mean, that draw he had was just... Oh my word. I mean, you saw everything that you need to see to prove that he's a fun fighter in those 15 minutes. There's just no more that I can show you. And Francisco, all of his wins have been by finish. He's never won a decision. Most of them have been by knockout, but he's got a few subs in there as well. This has got, again, all of these fights have got fight of the night written on them, but this is another one that I would say is likely to win it. It's just, this fight is just, it's probably my favourite on the whole card, I'm not going to lie. If you watched my fights to make after 296 video, you saw that I put Talbot with Brian Kelleher, and I'm going to stick this on this card here. Now, I'm not a big fan of Brian Kelleher. He seems like a cool dude, but as a fighter, he's average is the wrong word. He's a UFC fighter. He's obviously not average. He's obviously good, but in terms of compared against the rest of the UFC roster, he's quite low down. But I mean, you got Talbot, who's still very green, so I think it would be a good kind of veteran step up for Peyton Talbot. To be fair to Brian, he is an exciting fighter. I mean, the reason why he got chinned by Garbrandt was he was going for him, so you have to give him that. Although I do think that Talbot would make quite easy work of him and probably sub him in the first. But hey, I'm going to put it here as the main event of the prelims. Then we come in with another cracker of Abdul Razak Al Hassan versus Cody Brundage. Now, Al Hassan has 12 wins. They've all come by knockout. Do I need to say any more? Probably not. However, if there was one that I would say go back and watch, I'd say the Nico Price one. Or Nico Price, or maybe the one against Alessio, or both. Just watch all of his knockouts because they're all as scary as each other. But no, he's a bit up and down. He doesn't always win. He's not got a massive name, which is why I think he's perfect on a card like this. But he always brings the action, so he'd be a cracking opponent, I think, for Cody Brundage, who's only had one decision in his 10 wins, so a 90%, well, 80% finish rate and a DQ, you know, much of a muchness. But he's obviously recently had that really impressive slam KO in Texas, so he's got a little bit of heat, but not anything in terms of name value. It's just a cracking fight. Again, come on. Next up, Hyung-Sung Park against Clayton Carpenter. Now, Park is 9-0 in his overall MMA career. He's 2-0 in the UFC with 2 finishes. I mean, at flyweight, that's quite rare. There's not as many finishes at flyweight, but this guy is just a machine. So I think he's perfect on a card like this. And Clayton Carpenter is also undefeated, 1-0 in the UFC as well with the first round RNC. Very impressive. You've got 2 young flyweight prospects who seem to put on a show more often than not going head to head. I mean, it's just perfect. I really do think it is. Next up, I'm going to 170, and I'm going to do Goff against Gabe Green. Now, Billy Goff has only had 1 UFC fight. It was a first-round TKO, a very impressive performance. Out of his 9 wins, 7 have been knockouts, so he obviously comes to fight. And even the decisions, I've watched them back at the clips I could find, they're still exciting fights. He's an exciting fighter. And Gabe Green is more known for the people he's lost to than actually beat. I mean, he lost to Ian Gary, and he was the guy that the Brian Battle beat in, what was it, like 10, 15 seconds earlier in the year, or maybe in the end of last year. But he lost bad against Brian Battle. But again, he was coming forward. And I think in a fight with someone like Billy Goff, it just makes for fireworks. It really does. Second to last fight, I'm going to 145, and I'm going to do Daniel Pineda against Jepe Marcial. Now, Daniel Pineda is just one of those veterans that always seems a way to put on a good fight. He's had 29 wins, 0 been by decision. This guy either gets finished or he finishes people, and that's exactly what you want for a card like this. Pineda's another guy that's had a banger with Cub Swanson, although he does have a little bit of an issue, you know, with the old druggos, but we won't hold that against him. And as for Jepe, he has one of the lower finishing rates of anybody on this list, but he's another one of these fighters, even the decisions are usually quite entertaining. We got a really nice win over Jack Jenkins recently. I think this is just one of those where you have a veteran against a new guy and they both are just nutty scrappers, basically, is effectively how I'd see that fight. But again, if you were to show anything more than a hardcore, like a relatively okay MMA fan, those 2 names, they may know Pineda, but they probably won't know Marcial. And anybody more casual than that would have no idea. So it's perfect for a card like this. And the first fight on the card, I'm going to light heavyweight with Ibo Aslam against Guzkov. These are 2 more guys that have 100% finish rates. They've got 26 wins over their 2 MMA careers, and they've all been by stoppage. Guzkov made his UFC debut earlier on in the year on short notice against Volkan Oezdemir, came up short, and Aslam won on the Contender Series earlier in the year and needs a debut opponent. So, again, they're not really well known by the widespread audience. I say that's another one. Every single one of these fights could very easily be fight of the night. I think Dana would end up paying $500,000 in bonuses after this card, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, that just about wraps it up. I hope you hardcore fans like these fights, and any guys who don't recognise names in this video, please go and check them out. Every single fighter has got an incredible back catalogue on either YouTube or like wherever you get your fights, Fight Pass in some cases. Just go and watch all of these guys fight if you haven't, because they're incredible to watch. That's just about it for me. I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.